elected prime ministers within a 6-week period. Inflation is soaring. Wages are stagnating. Energy bills are skyrocketing, despite record-breaking profits. People are freezing in their homes because they can't afford to turn on the heat. 194 warm banks have opened across the country. Like food banks, a place you can go in to sit in a heated room. United Kingdom is the 5th richest country in the world. The media put the onus on the poor, too devoted to avocado toast and holidays. If they could just swallow their pride and take 4-minute cold showers during a freezing cold winter, they wouldn't have to worry about their energy bills. Unionization, industrial action, protest, all demonized. Something very sick is happening here. Been in late-stage capitalism for my entire lifetime. How late does it get until end-stage capitalism comes?
Video games! Hi, I'm nervous, and for that end-of-year blues, there's no better tonic than video games. And gosh darn it, there's been a lot of them this year. Whether you're a fan of AAA action spectacles, subtle point-and-click adventures, the weebiest JRPGs, or Sonic Hedgehog, gamers have been well served this year. Even outside of the mainstream, online marketplaces like Steam and itch have both seen thousands of new off-kilter indies, more than you could ever play in your lifetime this year alone. Rest assured, it has never been a better time to be an interactive entertainment enthusiast. I played a lot of video games this year that I haven't really had a chance to talk about yet, so I'd like to invite you to join me to take a look at the games of 2022. Mind you, this isn't exactly a Game of the Year list. It's been a fair few years since I left traditional games media, and now that I'm just a shrieking weirdo on YouTube, I can cast off the shackles of numerical scores and rankings. This way, we can get into some really fun stuff. Stuff that might not be good, but is notable or interesting in some way. Alright, look, I should probably come clean here. This year has had a number of heavy hitters like Elden Ring and Xenoblade 3, which I've been too busy to dig into. I don't feel like I've spent enough time with them to fully evaluate them, so in light of that, I'm just going to blabber about some random 2022 games I've played. So with that out of the way, let's dig into the Nervous Games of a Year 2022 edition. Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII, Reunion. Like most people, I like Final Fantasy VII. Not my favorite FF, but undeniably a great game, and one that arguably legitimized the JRPG genre within the Western mainstream. I really, really like Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's a game with an incredible amount of heart, and it was admirably unafraid to buck fan expectations by tearing down sacred idols and getting into some of that weird, delicious meta territory, and largely in a deft manner. There's one thing I've always hated, though, and that's compilation of Final Fantasy VII. Advent Children is one of the most embarrassing movies I've ever seen. Before Crisis is a Japan-only Docomo mobile game from 2004. It's probably bad. Dirge of Cerberus, well, people seem to think that one is pretty bad, so I'm kind of interested in playing it.
What's going on?
But we're talking about Crisis Core. Crisis Core is back, and so is Zack, and he's on the attack against the forces of Gact. People seem to really like this one back in the day. I didn't. It's a relatively bog-standard, mission-based action RPG, optimized for a brief respite of gaming while commuting to or from work. More or less, another of the PSP's many Monster Hunter also-rans. Mechanics were fiddly and unsatisfying, and being forced to use the PSP's tight little analog nub always felt awful, no matter what game you were playing. Hardcore fans tend to feel pretty strongly about Zack's tragedy, but if you've watched my Resident Evil 0 video, you know how I feel about prequels. Not every background story needs to be told in explicit detail, and in this case, I just don't think there's enough to Zack to fashion a prologue that neatly ties up with Final Fantasy VII. Because Cloud based his false memories on Zack, spoilers for a 25-year-old game, Zack paradoxically was only intended to exist as flavor for Cloud. Hence, Square felt the need to introduce a duo of superpowered pretty boys, Angeal and Gact. Alongside their best friend Sephiroth, they fly through the air, having bombastic cutscene sword fights. They get jealous over which one of them gets to donate blood to Gact's transfusion. They spin the devs' nod to My Bloody Valentine's 1991 shoegaze classic Loveless into a bunch of pretentious teen angst poetry.
Infinite in mystery is the gift of the goddess. We seek it thus and take to the sky. Ripples form on the water's surface. The wandering soul knows no rest.
Loveless, Act 1.
You remember?
Dramatically lit rooms, cryptic monologues about dreams and honor, Crisis Core is the worst tendencies of Final Fantasy writ large. Genesis Copies is about the most unimaginative enemy name I can think of, but it kills two birds with one stone, making the most of limited resources and making sure that Gact is regularly on screen without him needing to record any new voice lines. This remaster actually makes Crisis Core play better at least. The controls aren't as sticky. Seriously, go back and try that PSP game. Combat is like night and day. Ironically, I found myself appreciating Crisis Core more in Year of Our Lord 2022. With dozens of missions that often last 2 minutes tops, it's actually kind of zen to pick it up and mash through a few encounters when I found myself with nothing to do. Check this out. What if Metal Gear Solid, but you had to stop occasionally to do squats? Stupid, but oddly compelling. There is no way to make this story any less embarrassing, though. Angeal and Gact's villainous motivations don't really make any sense. And then there's this evil doctor in a t-shirt and sandals who's mad he didn't get a promotion or something. Angeal's betrayal of Soldier is basically Dark Side of the Law from the first episode of Home Movies.
In a world, turns out your old partner has gone dirty, gone mad. He's gone dirty? He's a dirty cop. There stands one. People don't understand me.
But hey, don't forget, there's a lot of important backstory here. Ever wonder why Aerith was selling flowers at the start of Final Fantasy VII? Well, you can be there to see Zack tell her that she should.
If I were you, I'd sell them. Midgar is full of flowers, your wallet's full of money.
Midgar full of flowers. Wallet full of money?
Wow! I was trying to figure out who Zack reminds me of. He's definitely a shonen hero, kind of a dunce, but good-hearted and hyperactive. Was he Goku?
I'll embrace my dreams in honor, and my dream is to become a hero.
All right.
Oh, too cocky.
My support.
And then it hit me.
You can do it, Zack.
Zack Fair is freaking Sonic the Hedgehog with a job.
Shut up!
Sonic Frontiers. Like all Sega trash kids, I have my share of history with Sonic. I played all of the Blue Ball's 16-bit outings more times than I can count. Sonic Adventure 2 was where I finally fell off, though. These high-speed grinds over bottomless pits just upset me, and Big the Cat's not even there to anchor me. I didn't play another Sonic game until this past summer when I streamed Wii Wagglefest Sonic and the Black Knight for charity. You can do it, Sonic! You can do it! I don't know what's happening! I think it feels like that's glitched. And the response was so enthusiastic, I thought we'd better check in with the Raw Hog's latest outing. Sonic Frontiers is pretty damn weird. And the most adventurous Sonic has been since, well, Sonic Adventure. Sonic is having his biggest identity crisis yet, featuring a vast open world, melee combat, and infuriating 3D stages with all of the pitfall of every other 3D Sonic game. Mercifully, you can skip them all if you're willing to spend some time doing some chill fishing with my homie Big the Cat, cruelly banished to a fishing phantom realm, though he seems pretty happy about it.
Would you like to try? I'll let you.
For some reason, there's a skill tree and level ups. Check out this not Korok who you level up with individually.
Congratulations! Congratulations! Congratulations!
Congratulations!
Congratulations!
Congratulations!
Congratulations!
Congratulations! Congratulations! Congratulations!
Congratulations!
Congratulations!
Congratulations!
The vast lore of Sonic has been a figure of fun with normal people for about 2 decades now, so naturally, Sega doubled down, hiring a lore manager with a story that attempts somberness to laughable ends. Ruminations on the fruitlessness of war and the meaning of death. There's numerous sweaty attempts to make the past games canon, name-dropping bosses from obscure entries, and occasional sepia-tone flashbacks to Sonic 3. These are lofty ideas for the hog, as if Sega felt Sonic needed a little bit more Evangelion. I didn't hate Sonic Frontiers, but it regularly infuriated me in a way that only 3D Sonic can. The Blue Ball's extreme speed never played nice with the number of hazards and jumping puzzles that stood between him and his goal, and a late-game chapter sees the player tasked with scaling 6 slippery towers, rocketing off walls and grinding on rails, with only one awkward jump sending you back to the earth below. Even in 2022, sometimes you just gotta say, good job, Sonic. Dragon Slayer 6, The Legend of Heroes 6, Trails Part 4, Trails from Zero. Trails is back, baby, and so is my Kiseki brain rot. Real Kiseki nerds have been talking about the cross-bell duology for over a decade. The middle chapters of Falcom's series within a series within a series. Initially passed over due to explicit request by Falcom to exceed, Trails in the West skipped right over to the Cold Steel tetralogy, a series within a series within a series within a series that recontextualized Trails in the format of modern Persona. Look, I need to know what's going on in the fantasy Catholic continent of Zemuria, but I'll be the first to admit that I'm not much of a Cold Steel fan. These games firmly veer into horny high school town, with terrible protagonist Rean, the envy of every boy and the desire of every girl. Naturally, there's relationship mechanics, so you can pick your favorite waifu in height order from Big Sword Girl to any number of increasingly tiny Lolitas. But it's finally here, The Legend of Heroes, Trails from Zero. Direct sequel Trails to Azure isn't far behind, releasing in just a couple of months. Detective Lloyd Bannings has just graduated from the police academy with a view to join the Crossbell PD, but things aren't quite that simple. Upon arriving back in town, he's ushered into a room to join the Special Support Section, a gang of teen misfits unafraid to tackle Crossbell's real problems, like finding lost cats and returning overdue library books. Playing as a cop is a pretty queasy proposition to me nowadays. But fortunately, the SSS aren't cops. The Crossbell PD has a reputation for callousness and corruption that's eroded the trust of the everyday civilian. The SSS are more like the Bracer Guild seen in earlier entries, a sort of community outreach service. This isn't really a police procedural, more of a framing for general JRPG side quests. Naturally, there's an overarching plot about competing mafia families, ominous drugs, and a mysterious little girl. You know, Zero differs from other Trails games in that it's completely localized to Crossbell and its surrounding outskirts, rather than a traipse across the entire country. This allows you to really familiarize yourself with the city and its numerous inhabitants, virtually all of whom are named and have new dialogue following every major story beat. It's pretty chill. Or at least it should be. Yours truly learned some very unfortunate habits from playing Trails games over the years. After discovering I missed several hidden, lore-important quests across the first 2 Trails in the Sky games, I found myself slave to the walkthrough, ensuring I missed no quests, no recipes, no book chapters, no time-sensitive optional story beats. This really hampered my enjoyment of the Cold Steel games, titles that I was already frustrated with due to reasons I mentioned earlier, but I unconsciously ended up depriving myself of touring Erebonia by obsessively checking off missables like I was playing a freaking Assassin's Creed game. I started the first few chapters of Zero in the same manner, until I realized what I loved so much about Trails in the Sky. This isn't an epic quest, it's an extended vacation, a slow life RPG, an opportunity to stop and smell the flowers in a fantasy setting. I ditched the walkthrough and my fun increased tenfold. I came across most of the hidden content organically. And that was enough for me. Soul Hackers 2. Soul Hackers 1 is an absolute banger. Hostile, disturbing, cyberpunk as heck, and with a killer soundtrack. I'd go as far as to say it's my favorite game in the wider Megaten canon. Soul Hackers 2, the world's least expected sequel, both announced and released this year, is none of these things. But it's still a weird-ass game, particularly because of its identity crisis. Atlus seems to be angling to create a third pillar to stand alongside mainline SMT and Persona, but why create a sequel to a 25-year-old game to do so? Soul Hackers 2 has little in common mechanically with its predecessor, nor with the rest of the rather eclectic Devil Summoner series. It makes the biggest change up to the battle system since Strange Journey, but it's still a rather simplistic change. Rather than turn denial, hitting a weakness adds to the stack, which creates a powerful all-out attack at the end of the player's turn, increasingly powerful dependent on the number of demons in the stack. It feels like Babby's first Megaten, an easy-to-learn and easy-to-master melding of modern Persona and Tokyo Mirage sessions. That said, if it's meant to be Babby's first Megaten, it's also bringing a lot of baggage with it. Yatagarasu, the Phantom Society, the Kuzunoha clan, Zoma, Dr. Thrill, Victor, and the Goma Den. These nouns likely mean nothing to anybody but the most ardent Devil Summoner fans. And while Soul Hackers 2 is mostly a self-contained story, it can't help but constantly reference its past, as if it's desperately trying to appease all players. Weird game, but one I enjoyed a little bit more than I expected to. I plan to say more about Soul Hackers 2 in the new year, so maybe let's couch that one until then, huh? ADriann. Squeenix have been killing it lately, especially when it comes to remastering 16-bit oddities, many of which had never been seen before outside of Japan. Saga sickos like me have been eating good for the past few years, but I'm also thrilled to see an HD 2D remake of Raibu. Yeah, look, I know. It'd be nice to have the original ROM in there for preservation's sake, but the ROM and Aeon Genesis translation patch will always be out there if you really want it. And I know that not everybody's into the HD 2D aesthetic. Personally, I think it looks great, and this release goes beyond a simple graphical touch-up. This is truly a labor of love. They even brought freaking Hironobu Kageyama to sing in both Japanese and English. Come on!
Forgotten place, Babylonia. The king was forced with his soul.
Live Alive has always been a fun anomaly in Square's 16-bit RPG catalog. Wildly experimental, it's a small numbers RPG made up of 8 short vignettes, each based on a different genre of pulp cinema. You got your cowboys, your kung fu, your alien homage, your ninja infiltration, your mecha anime, and even Caveman with Ringo Starr. Each chapter is about 2 hours long and subverts the RPG format in a variety of fun and playful ways. There's this fighting game send-up where you choose your opponent and learn their moves as you're hit by them. Yayyích𝗱𝗃𝗺𝗰 gets to have a pretty good time with the soundtrack, channeling her iconic work on Street Fighter II. The ninja chapter sees you infiltrate a feudal lord's compound. You can breeze through it, kill absolutely everybody, or go stealthy and kill nobody but the lord at the end, and you get different results and rewards for each. The western vignette is this killer spaghetti western send-up, where you have to prepare for a bandit gang's siege of a small town by fashioning traps out of anything lying around, and then employing the townsfolk to help out in setting them. My personal favorite is the sci-fi chapter, this blend of Alien and 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's pretty much a straight-up adventure game with a few survival horror elements. It's actually not too dissimilar to Enix's earlier Jesus, Kyofu no Biomonster, but that's probably due to their shared cinematic influences. Once you complete 7 discrete chapters, an 8th opens up, tying everything together, followed by a big last hurrah that has a surprising number of different outcomes depending on the decisions you make. Live Alive, I'm going to keep making that mistake. Live Alive is an absolute treasure, and in our world of 100-hour JRPGs, it refreshingly gets in and out and still leaves you time to make dinner. A valuable trait for all of us old farts with increasingly less time. Me and My Eldritch Parasite. Me and My Eldritch Parasite is a lighthearted romp through the Eternal Residence, a Dyson sphere-sized apartment complex. The setup's simple. You're a little dude with an Eldritch Parasite, and you'd like to get rid of it. This is frowned upon by the ruling class, so you slip out each night in search of the tools you need to complete successful DIY home surgery. This is a surreal, side-scrolling adventure in which you explore the procedurally generated Eternal Residence, seeking a series of tools required to successfully complete your surgery, while also taking care to manage your parasite's hunger and anger levels. Holding the spacebar while hitting the arrow keys sends out your parasite's feeding tendril, allowing you to eat capsules to lower your hunger, or kill little buzzing insects to sate your anger. Feeding or killing when your needs have already been met sends your parasite into a frenzy, and it will eventually murder you if you continue to do so. Keeping the balance is easier said than done, as passing over any food or insect at torso height will automatically feed or kill, regardless if your tendril is out or in. I don't know if maybe I was doing something wrong. This is an obscure-ass game. Each tool you need is found in a locked suitcase, and you need to get a blue key to open it. Once you've located and unlocked a suitcase, you get the option to take or leave a tool, but since take and leave are on the same keys as movement, it's easy to accidentally take or leave something just by moving on to the case. I failed to collect a number of tools because of this. But once you collect a tool, you take it back to your room on floor 0 to end the night, and you get a little exposition between the protagonist and a mysterious figure who claims they can help you get rid of your parasite. And then you head back out the following night in search of more goodies. Or you can attempt surgery at any time, though an unsuccessful attempt will clear your inventory and restart your progress. With 6 different endings to find, it's a laugh-o-rama, a real gutbuster in more ways than one. Naturally, things aren't quite so simple. The Eternal Residence is crawling with a whole host of ill-mannered jerks keen to shove their own tendrils in your face for massive damage. Some pursue you relentlessly, others send out harmful projectiles, and others simply dart from floor to floor, keeping to themselves, in search of sustenance. You can take 6 hits before you're turned into goo, at which point you're sent to the regeneration chamber, and though you've failed to find anything that night, the penalty is minimal as the inventory in your apartment remains intact. Most of the time, the suitcase key you require is held by one of your fellow hosts, malignant or benign, which they drop after eating enough food to evolve. So let the big dog eat, steal his key, and then make a beeline for the chest, wherever it may be. There's children screaming outside. I don't know what's going on. me and My Eldritch Parasite is actually kind of an aggravating and off-putting game, but I like that about it. It reminds me a mix of Baroque with that awful Spy vs. Spy Master System game. It does hard crash regularly, which isn't so great, but I really dig the way it looks and sounds. Yayiś𝗱𝗂𝗺𝗰. How many y'all like Steins Gate? Well, you might not like this. I do. I really, really do. But it's a rough putt. The long unlocalized first entry in Chiyomaru-Shikara's science adventure series is all about Taku, a stammering hikikomori who lives in a shipping container and spends his day in the dark playing MMOs and erotic visual novels. That sounds familiar. Terrified of human contact, Taku does his utmost to go each day without having to speak to a single other human. But ironically, he finds himself wrapped up in the new generation madness, a rash of serial killings plaguing Tokyo's trendy Shibuya neighborhood. His nervousness, suspicious behavior, and unfortunate proximity to many of the crime scenes sees him become a suspect in the case, and that's not to mention his possible psychic abilities. Whereas Steins Gate had the phone trigger system, in which you influence the story's path by sending text messages, Yayiś_HEAD has the delusion trigger system. Taku's brain and wiener are in a constant war of Thanatos and Eros, and his imagination is so strong that he fully dissociates and hallucinates while awake. If you're familiar with the sequel Yayiś_CHILD, and if you're not, you can pick both of these up in a 2-pack for your Nintendo Switch, you know how this works. The player chooses whether Taku will have a good delusion, usually erotic, a bad delusion, usually grotesque, or if he'll chase away the thoughts and successfully stay in the moment. Your first path through Yayiś_HEAD is entirely linear, as was the original game, but this updated re-release features a myriad of additional paths and endings focusing on your favorite waifu. Yayiś_HEAD is really a game that I would only selectively recommend. You need to have a high tolerance for horny anime nonsense, and even then, Taku is a lot to deal with. He's a jet black satire of the worst otaku habits, and one who is incapable of growth. There's a pretty fun mystery here, albeit ones in which busty schoolgirls pull magical swords out of the negative space, but be prepared to spend a lot of time within the head of a truly odious protagonist. Vampire Survivors. The most active idle game and the indie sensation on everybody's lips this year. Initially, I didn't think Vampire Survivors would be my bag, but after hearing everybody and their grandmother sing its praises, I thought I might as well see what all the fuss was about, especially since the price to entry was so minuscule. And not since The Binding of Isaac have I been so taken with a roguelite. Enter the Gungeon came close, but its runs are ultimately too lengthy and discouraging when you die, whereas Vampire Survivors is the ultimate one more go. Happy to bestow a ticker-tape parade of unlockables upon you for most of your playthroughs. The concept, one I'm aware Vampire Survivors didn't invent, is simple. Survive for as long as you can against hordes of the undead as your character auto-fires in every direction. Kill ghoulies, collect experience orbs, and level up to increase your firepower. The longer the night goes on, the harsher the challenges become, but so increases the opportunities to turn your character into a spinning whirlwind of death, with most weapons capable of powerful evolutions depending on the power-ups you collect. I got a Steam Deck this year, and despite having the world's most powerful handheld at my bedside table, Vampire Survivors is what gets the most use out of it. Actually, maybe it needs that extra horsepower. Looks like my PC's not quite beefy enough to record the chaos of late-game footage. Kill the hype inside of you, but also do believe the hype in Vampire Survivors. This one's really something special. Growing My Grandpa. Growing My Grandpa is a retro-tinged adventure in which troubled elementary school student Adriann finds the remains of an arcane experiment within her basement. a living mass of hair scurries about a long-abandoned lab. Armed with a grimoire, a doll, and a photo of her late grandfather, Adriann offers these objects to the mass and begins growing her grandpa. This is a pretty fun and gross little point-and-click adventure mixed with a virtual pet. Each week, you as Adriann details Grandpa's progress to the school guidance counselor who serves as the game's narrator. You head down into the basement and pick through piles of trash in search of food and language cards to keep Grandpa fed and learning. You feed him a whole bunch of nasty, stale food to get him growing, but you also need to hide lots of old crap like batteries and old band-aids in some of the food, so he'll barf up keys and flashlights and stuff so you can unlock other parts of the basement. It's gross and it's great. This is a real quick and dirty one that you can complete over the course of the afternoon, and it's only like £2. I strongly recommend you give Growing My Grandpa a growing go. As I said at the top of this video, this really isn't an exhaustive list. On top of your Xenobabes and your LD rings, I haven't really had a chance to truck with Norco or Citizen Sleeper or Pentiment or Signalis yet. Maybe we can talk about some of those on here sometime during the new year. Sound off in the comments about what you dug this year, or what you didn't dig, or if you think I'm just a stupid bastard. On second thought, maybe don't do that last part, and you could just like and subscribe. That'd be really nice of you. But it wouldn't be a Games of the Year list without a Game of the Year. So, the Nervous Game of the Year 2022, hopefully the first in a long tradition, is Dorofin no Machi by Kingo Hamada. Congratulations, Kingo.